to work with us so that we eventually drive this. This feeds also into other government efforts to make sure that the private sector is well and seamlessly encouraged to participate in government services. We had partners, as earlier mentioned, the World Bank. Mr. Minister, we needed some resources, and they willingly participated in deriving some resources towards us, and the World Bank generated these resources for us to make sure that we hire and retain consultancy. Now, there is a phobia at times in this part of the world about consultants, but the PPP space needs them, and the reason will be explained much later as we go through the day. But one of the most important things is that we cannot live in isolation of best practice worldwide. And therefore, you need to do the documents, you need to make sure that you capture all the information you need so that when the private sector comes in, they are not grappling to find the information. So the documentation, the processes, we had to get them right. So we needed to address ourselves to the challenges that local governments have. Honourable Minister, one of the challenges we found was that local governments, while they are administratively structured, but from a business to do business mindset was hardly there. Local governments are used a lot more to coming to the center and asking for subventions. And because of that, doing business as local governments was set aside. Yet we know that as government, you had deliberately created them to be autonomous from the center. There's a decentralization effort, but they can also they can contract, they can sue, they can be sued, and therefore they can do business. So to turn that mindset, which has been as old as Uganda, we are independent so many years, to turn around that, it's not something that we could achieve easily, and therefore we've been working on it to make sure that we realize it. And hence the need for us to go to the core of why are we behaving like this as local governments. The second reason, we discovered that there were so many tools. Because eventually local governments realized that the world was moving on, there was not enough resource from the center, they started going all over the place to try and attract investments, and they became vulnerable. So you could find a tool from, an interest group somewhere, a civil society somewhere, one government, the other government, and the local governments were getting confused. So given the guidance you gave us, we decided to harmonize all of this so that local governments become predictable. They cease to do business as if they are not organized. So in order to do that, we went back and examined and mapped all the existing institutional processes for PPPs. We know that PPPs, the law came in 2015, but we needed to go backwards and say, what is it that government has put in place that help us to map and produce these opportunities that we need to tap into. So we assessed the processes. Can I ask you to go to the next slide? We assessed the processes. We assessed, it's not showing, but it's okay. We can move on. We assessed the regulatory framework, the ecosystem surrounding these processes, and we looked at practical and pragmatic institutional processes. And arising out of that, we came up with what we believed would be a way of dealing with the local governments. Now, I want to remind us, all of us, that before that, we actually had a national guideline. The national guidelines were as a result of the law, the regulations that we passed, and the law that we put in place. But, Mr. Minister, we saw a detachment. The national guidelines operated at a higher level, and local governments needed to do simple things, but they also do complex things. For example, a local government would want a headquarter building. They would want a level 4 clinic. They would want a community center. But the guidelines at national level put them at the same threshold of a national project. And therefore, they were not able to tap into investment and monies that are available in the community. So the rich man of Kayunga, for example, who would want to build a community center and use the resources on the ground with the local government, was not capacitated to do that kind of investment, because the guidelines necessitated that we go through quite a long process of international tender and open tender, and before you realize you've spent a lot more in the tender process and the contracting before you actually deliver the actual benefit that you need for the community. So the need was to try and look at those national guidelines, trim them down without losing the impact and import of the law, and then simplify them. And this is the simple journey that we went through. So we did all this assessment, and we also looked at the laws, the PPP policy, the PPP Act, the Local Government Act, Public Finance Management Act, PPP regulations, and national planning, NPP, national planning, national development plan, and all of them, we assessed them to come to what we are going to be presenting later. Now, what were the findings? We discovered that, first and foremost, there was even no clarity on what a PPP project is. As simple as that. Next slide. I think I'll try to use this, hopefully. No. No. Okay. Technology findings, please. Okay, so we discovered that the understanding of a PPP was as diverse. Honorable Minister and the guests, when somebody gives away a piece of land in a local government for people to use for a market activity, in their understanding, that's a PPP. By definition, it is. But practically, there is a lot that you have to embed in that arrangement for you to realize a true PPP. When somebody gives away a park and says, Mr. So-and-so operate that taxi park, it's a PPP. And that was the political definition. The legal definition was something different. So there was a detachment. But, Honourable Minister, the most frustrating part was that even the land was being leased out in the middle of cities. So land would be given away for a token lease fee over the years. So local government would say, we have a piece of land on the main street, so and so take it, and you can give us 50 million annually. And they bank that, but then the development comes up, and all of a sudden they've lost a lot of value that they would have contracted. So we went back and assessed all of these and said the best thing to do is to define what a PPP is, so that local government actually understand it, but also understand the underlying value that they would accrue from this kind of understanding. So the list is lengthy. I wouldn't want to go through it. I will make sure that this is available. There's another inherent problem we found. The process itself, which was in our national guidelines, was quite long. I've already referred to that. But the other weakness was the human resource within the local government. Honourable Minister, this is a political issue, and I know you've been at the center of it when you are in the budgetary side of Parliament. The creation of these institutions was never matched with the capabilities in the institutions. So when you have a planner, and good enough, Uruguay is represented here and some local governments, the planner has his daily job, and his contract terms spoke to the daily job. All of a sudden, there are these new initiatives. And the planner tends to look at them as additional assignments and not inherently traditional to his assignment. So planners, commercial officers, engineers, all of them did not see this new mechanism as an opportunity. So it played the second fiddle and was left aside. So the consultants and ourselves going through this work, we discovered that getting a tool, a simple tool like a concept note field, would take us a long time. Now imagine if a private sector came to engage to do an investment, and you don't even have the basic around the project, the basic information. So all of this became a problem, and we identified them as weaknesses, and we've tried to find a way of addressing them. You will see going forward that the way we've addressed some of these weaknesses is to deal with a simplified process. A simplified process is found in the guidelines. The guide is basically to try and walk them through the process. So now, Minister, the guidelines you'll be launching are not only statements of fact, but they also have templates. So instead of asking local governments to conceptualize a project, we've actually asked questions around that project. We say, for example, what is the estimated cost of the project? That is guiding. So they have to work out that figure and plug it in. when we talk about another sensitivity, we ask a question and guide them on how to do it. So it becomes simpler for them to actually conceptualize the project. That way we are hand-holding them, and we believe that that process, which has been eased, will eventually deliver the projects we want to see. We've shrunk, I'm skipping over some of this, we've shrunk the stages through which a project goes. The concept stage, the project cycle has been shrunk without losing the intent of the law. Inception stage has also been shrunk. We've made sure that it is easy. The feasibility, we've made sure that the process is easier. We're walking them through that. And finally, we've come to the guidelines as they are. And I'll ask my colleagues to go to continuation, the slide that shows continuation, and this is where we are at with the handbook that you're going to be launching. We provide for things that are inherently traditional to local governments. For example, there have been those projects that have not been conceptualized by local government, but that come from the market. Market means the community within which local government is situated. Those projects, we believe, are a response to some of the planning gaps we may have. Again, I will default to Kayunga. Supposing a local person in Kayunga proposed to the local administration in Kayunga to have a business center around the headquarters, all along around a major hospital, and that has not been the priority of a local government, how do you deal with that? Now, whereas traditionally the default position would be saying, no, we've not planned for it, we believe that we can empower local governments now to try and treat those as unnecessary state proposals, but we give them a mechanism under which these can be worked, so that we don't push back, but we embrace some of these. So, in the guidelines, those are the tools we've come up with, which are embedded in the guidelines. They are simpler in language. The terminologies could be the universal terminologies, and we intended that to be that way because they need to be understood, but they are simpler in the way they are going to be applied throughout this process. I'll move on to the next slide, which is basically the project cycle. Honourable Minister, our cycle for the local governments is going to be a 5+1 stage approach. So you have an inception stage, which is basically where you identify a project. We go through the traditional approvals, including local government, local council approval. We get the appointment of a team, and the reason for this is to make sure that that team actually works for the institution of the local government. You have a project officer there, you have a planner there, you have a finance person there, so that together they prepare it for approvals, and then they submit to the PPP unit, all of those documents, and then we process it through DC, Development Committee, and other institutions of government as need may warrant. The next stage is, there is a reason, a very important reason, allow me to mention this, that Mr. Shaba is here. I think government has made a decision that all projects must be documented. And the import of that is not to overcommit government without having a sense of where we are going. So local governments are encouraged, to the extent possible, let's get these projects go through these stages. When they are documented, you get a number for resource allocation. Now, at times we think we have enough resources at local government, but oftentimes we may need a backup or a backstop from government and other partners. So for us to get that number is so crucial, but it also gives you a lot more national coverage, just in case of contingent liabilities that may accrue. So it's important that at this stage we address it and we deal with it, and we harmonize to make sure we push in the same direction. So we've shrunk the feasibility stage. That's stage 2, which is basically where you do your studies around the project so that it's fully documented. The procurement stage is documented in there. I wouldn't want to go through this, but what we are saying, you conduct promotional activities, you issue procurement documents. Those are known and we know the process and we've documented it. We appoint an evaluation committee when the bids are about to be received. You, of course, undertake the bid evaluation and so on and so forth. I wouldn't want to go through this process and waste a lot of time, given the time constraints we have. And after that, we go to the contracting stage. This is where you get a process auditor. This is a new innovation. Mr. Minister, traditional projects are contracted without the process being evaluated. And often, we end up with the audit function doing a catching up. So what we've decided to do is as soon as the project has started and we've appointed a project team, we appoint a process auditor. And this is appointed independent of us. Often it's the internal auditor general who appoints that person. And the idea is let him audit these processes from the word go. The intention is to make sure that we are accountable. We are accountable to ourselves, we are accountable to government, but also we are accountable to the partners. When the partners see that seal of auditing the process, then they are confident that this process has been certified. We're also trying to limit what happens later when a process has not been as open. Eventually, you end up in a committee of parliament and the questions are asked as if the process was never documented. So that innovation is important, and we are making sure that it is embedded in the system, and the internal Auditor General's office has been supportive for all the projects we've done at local government and those that we are processing to do at national government. We also believe that we need the center to know about some of these projects. Although they are local government and local governments are independent, Honourable Minister, for the time being, we've said that if a project value is above 200 million, the local government submits PPP agreements to Solicitor General. This is in tandem with the guidance of the Attorney General's office, but also is to make sure that the chief legal officer of government is informed about the project. He needs to have sign-off. But also that process enables us to make sure that the other government agencies are aware. Why am I saying this? If somebody is investing more than 200 million, definitely they will follow their money. And when things go wrong, they will come to the center. So we're making sure that local governments are covered. It's for your own good, but at the same time to make sure that we have approval at the highest level possible. And then, of course, the last stage is the implementation stage, where the project goes through implementation. But Mr. Minister, aware that PPPs at times is do a project, recoup your money, and hand over. The plus one I've put is the handover stage. Mr. Minister, we are trying to be very careful. Projects have been done and handed over when they are shell, when you can't actually operate it. So we are embedding the strength at the moment a project is structured to make sure that eventually it's handed over after the investor has recouped their money. We would prefer that this project is handed over in the state in which we believe it's going to be operable. And I'll give an example, Honourable Minister. When you did the Serena, people tend to forget that it's a government-owned hotel. It's a 25-year concession. But the reason Serena is as well kept as this one, which is private sector, is because government deliberately built in a clause for the handover. So Serena operators who are private sector are motivated to keep it in that state because that day will come when they have to hand over to the minister, the hotel. And the condition is that that hotel must be in a good condition, operable stage for it to be carried forward. So that's why you see the repairs. Now, if you compare Serena with the others where we just signed and we do not have the handover, eventually people leave it and the thing starts to fall apart. So we are very mindful of this, and we've made sure that even at local government level, where somebody builds a structure for local government, a headquarter, for example, for local government, and he says, I'm going to use one floor to recoup my money, after that I hand over. Chances are that the workmanship and everything that goes in there may go down south. But we're making sure that they are inherently embedded contractually to make sure that by the time they walk away from this commercial building at the local government headquarters, it's operable and its maintenance has been documented and the local government can maintain it over a period of time going forward. So those are the few 5+1 stages of this process, and Mr. Minister, those are the things that we've put in the guidelines. We've also been forward-looking, Honourable Minister. Currently, the world is grappling with climate change. What we've done is to embed a few guidelines on climate change. This is important, given that you've been at the forefront as the executive in pushing and creating awareness around things like waste management, environmental protection, areas that have to be preserved, where people have been, local government have actually opened up most of the areas that should be preserved as green catchment, water catchment areas, and have opened them up and released them. The president has been very strong on this, so we've put in an element to make sure that this is covered for. We've explained the roles of contracting authority, a transaction advisor. We've given guidelines on the stages of the project cycle so that they are simplified. We've given guidance on the need to appoint a transaction advisor, particularly so where in-house resources are not available. This is important. I've spoken to that earlier. And the guidelines are simpler, they are straightforward, and the plain templates were modified to make sure that they're easy to use. We believe that these guidelines, the way they are, will ease the process of doing PPPs, and that our partners in local governments will have no further excuse not to adopt PPPs and other alternate financing mechanisms. Now, so as we're doing this, we had partners who had long been in the market. FMDV is one of them, and UNCDF is the other. And they were grappling in the dark because the resources they had were centered around individual districts. But they also didn't have a bearing because they were coming with tools which were very good, but they were unique to them. FMDV, for example, touched two institutions, in Nansana and I think in Entebbe. And they were dealing with one project. And this is my excuse for the district in Kayunga. And then UNCDF chose one or two districts in the north, and they weren't touching everybody. But then we thought, these tools are working. We consulted the ministry. We realized that those tools were working, were unique to those districts, but they didn't have a national outlook at local government. So we brought them in and had a conversation. And the moment we looked at the tools they had developed, we realized that actually it was almost a photocopy of what we are doing. So we agreed to harmonize this effort. And all of us have worked together. There's something called pooled finance, which UNCDF was pushing. It's a terminology basically different from PPP, only that this is resources that are pulled from either partners and people who are willing to put money in a particular sector. And then FMDV was pushing another. So we've aligned. So the guidelines you have before you are a combination of work that has got pooled finance, the effort that FMDV was doing, and ourselves to have a universal government-recognized approach to doing public-private partnerships. So that way, the local governments are not scattered. Our partners in the Ministry of Local Government had initially also come up with something called the LED, Local Economic Development Program, I believe. And that was also to try and empower local governments to work. But they also needed a lot of resources from the ministry, from the Ministry of Finance, to crystallize that effort. So we sat together and we adapted best practice from all of these three, and we put them under one umbrella body, which is one umbrella guideline, which is the guideline that we have. Good enough, it links into the national guidelines. It also links into the PPP Act. That way, the excuse of us not being organized to engage the private sector to do these development projects and the infrastructure and the services is gone. Today, sir, you're going to use to make sure that we deliver what we are supposed to deliver. I want to thank our consultants. Can I ask you again to stand up, Ketan and group? So they got baptism of fire. We initially thought that they normally used to say, our government is disorganized. This is Global Thornton, Grant Thornton. And they said, but the government, why aren't you moving? Good enough. One of them is from, there's a gentleman from Kenya. Where is he? He's gone. Okay. So one is from Kenya. The lady in the middle, Angel, is from Tanzania. Gentleman here is from Tanzania. He's from Uganda office. I think Tanzania as well. Yeah. And sir, the experience working with local governments there and the experience working with local governments here was revealing. Time came and we had to move with them throughout the country. And that revealed a lot more. So they brought in tradition. These people are hired by private sector normally. So the private sector is more ready to engage in transactions than we are. So what we did, we reversed it, and we hired them for government, so that they bring in the outlook of private sector to doing business, but also take on board the government approach to doing business. That way, what you have, which has been put together with their support working with us, is that you have a document that looked at private sector as well as the government sector and brought those competences and cohesion into the booklet. And that way, the excuse, oh, these people won't understand us and won't understand them, is gone. Thank you very much. May I stop at this moment, and thank you, sir, for listening to me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
What's more, listening to the chief experts reveals, deeply communicates, and strategically unveils our journey. And listening to him, we note that having the overall legal, regulatory, and policy framework at the national level isn't sufficient. To deepen it, we need to cascade so that the implementers, who are the subnational local governments, the private sector, resident within the country, outside the country, but willing to invest heavily in this collaborative partnership for the delivery of those large-scale investments, creation and development of facilities, and deepening service delivery is properly guided right from the bottom roots up to the overall framework within the subnational. What a very informative oversight and overview of the whole framework so far. Thank you very much, Jim. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give another round of applause. All right, Honorable Minister, while we're still here, now we want to send our deep apologies for those that we erroneously missed, but we're here, and those who have since joined us. We have GIZ representation. Yes, thank you very much. Apologies in case we erroneously missed you. We have USAID SIA. Thank you very much for being with us. And then we have Oyam District Local Government. Oyam District Local Government. Oh, thank you very much. Excuse me. Honorable Minister, those are the colleagues with erroneously missed. Permit me then move to the next item, and with again honor invite the representative of the PSST to come and make those remarks.
Sorry, at times we get carried away when we're doing this. I got carried away, Mr. PS, acting PS, kindly excuse me. May I take this opportunity to recognize my board members before I lose my job? May I request the board members to stand up? I've just seen Mr. Kisirinya walking in. Thank you very much. Mr. Kisirinya represents Private Sector Foundation. Mr. Engineer Ofunji represents Uganda Investment Authority. Now, our board is called the PPC, Public-Private Partnerships Committee. And the others, Mr. Guloba was here. We shall introduce the others as they come. Thank you very much.
My sincere apologies too. Sorry for that oversight. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the acting PSST to come and deliver the remarks on behalf of that office. Thank you very much, sir. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. MC. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In the interest of time, allow me to recognize my minister Honorable Amos Rugorobi, the Minister of State for Finance in charge of planning, and then stand on the protocol of my friend Jim, who has been here. He has recognized everybody, so I stand on his protocol and that of the MC. I recognize all of you in your respective capacities as already recognized. Allow me first of all to tender in the apology of PSST, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, who has been unable to come because of other competing pressures at office. You know, we are in a tough time of trying to work on the budget framework paper with tight deadlines or timelines with submission to Parliament and the rest of the processes involved. So he has requested me to stand in for him, and maybe rightly so, because what Jim didn't tell you, first of all, thank Jim and team for putting this up, but what he didn't tell you is that before the PPP unit started standing on its feet, we were working together, and I was overseeing the unit then as the Commissioner for Public Investment, because that was the arrangement at that time before we processed the PPP policy and the PPP law, and gave the independence of PPPs, rightly so, and an independent governance structure. So, although I didn't exactly become ED, but now, Jim, you should recognize me as give me some credit for that. But allow me also thank the PPP unit for basically two things. One, before I read the speech, and it's going to be very brief, for really this awareness around PPP frameworks and really the whole model of PPPs in the country. Before all this work started, and Jim has highlighted some good things from the diagnostics they have done in local government and nationwide, there was complete lack of awareness about the importance of PPPs in our socio-economic transformation as a country. I remember around 2016 for members from private sector at Golf Course. I was with Orono Twe is here. He's not from the unit. Why is not around? Okay, so Orono Twe works as a senior technical advisor, I think, in the PPP unit. So we had presented a very good presentation about the benefits of PPs, the different models, that alphabet soup. Build, own, build, whatever, all those things. And we thought we were doing a good work. So we presented to a large gathering like this. And then one of the other presenters, I think it was Patrick Vitature, came and he rubbished all of us. He said, look at these government officials. They don't know PPPs. PPPs are things like we are doing corporate social responsibility, and everybody was applauding, and we didn't even get any recognition. So that was 2016. He said, corporate social responsibility, the private sector comes and supports government to do things government would not have done. That's PPP. Okay, so now our definitions, high profile and life cycle hypothesis, all those things which went away. So I thank you for moving us this far. Two, is also popularizing why we need studies. Because with PPPs, if you don't study, the private sector comes when they have full knowledge. And then you have information asymmetries. Information asymmetries is where one party, and it's dangerous in PPPs, has more information than you. Definitely, that's a recipe for disaster. So I am happy that we brought in the element of studying so that we get evidence whenever we are negotiating PPPs contracts or structuring PPPs. It is not also an easy journey, because I remember then when we started popularizing investment, or what we call PIMS, Public Investment Management Systems, we went to cabinet, not parliament, and they almost chased us, said, you are wasting our time. Government knows its priorities, don't they? Why do you waste all this money to do, should go away. But now over time, I am happy again, people know that it's important. In fact, studies, roughly, they take around 3 to 4% of the total project cost, I think, showing you its significance. Because if you go along with a bad project, you are stuck with it. Somebody joked it's like a bad marriage. Bad. But also you can kill a very good project, because from a layman's point of view, what looks glittering, when you study it, then challenges and risks start manifesting. So in the same spirit, Mr. Minister, since I've gotten a chance that you're presiding over this, we ask for your support in making sure that we finalize setting up the Project Preparation Fund. Project Preparation Fund is important because, as you see, the requirements for all these institutions study projects, both public but even private PPPs, you can see we need to support them with resources. Having a transaction advisor. Transaction advisors are highly priced. I don't know how much you paid these consultants here. It's a huge amount of money. Feasibility studies for complex PPPs, huge amount of money. So we can have all these good frameworks, but the moment we do not set up a fund to help entities, then we shall not move any distance. We have started, as you know, we have domiciled some money under NPA. It's not much. Now I think it was like 4 billion. Now we've moved it to 8 billion, but we need a bigger fund. But more importantly, for PPP projects, because if you don't study PPPs, it can be a problem, as you all know. I will not go deep into that. Allow me, and I'm sorry, because of my relationship and work with the PPPs, I was asking Jim whether I'm still certified, because the institution that certified me, PPP, has since closed, IP3, so I don't know whether I'm still certified, but the knowledge is still here, although the institution that was in Washington closed. So, ladies and gentlemen, the PSST delegated me to read for you a short speech, and he recognizes that the public-private partnership policy of 2010 expressed its commitment for government to use PPPs as an alternative mode of financing public infrastructure and services. And he affirms government's commitment, which is reflected in subsequent steps that government took, including enactment of the Public-Private Partnership Act 2015, and also the rest of the legal and regulatory framework to guide the identification, preparation, procurement, and management of PPP projects, as Jim has already highlighted. The Act was also followed by regulations in 2018, of course aimed at supplementing the Act, and of course the national PPP guidelines that serve as an elaborate guide on procedures and requirements for all phases of a PPP project at national level. Now you can see we have also now moved to local government level to complete the entire cycle. Aware that government has initiated various programs aimed at decentralizing economic activity, empowering local governments, and creating inclusiveness of both local investors and other subnationals, it is important to adopt new processes and procedures that enable this to happen seamlessly. Now, we also recognize that government decentralization efforts, such as the local economic development model, now the parish development model, are also complementary to this process. And for them to really work and give us proper results, there is a need for the national PPP processes to be simplified, like the ED PPP unit indicated. Something intrigued me, just as a by the way, he said we shall need a 2-page feasibility study. It's extremely simplified. Now my mind, as somebody who is involved in investment appraisal, I started saying, how will I fit all this information in financial analysis, economic analysis, environmental analysis, institutional framework, human capital requirements, so manpower, environmental, in 2 pages. But we shall see. That's a good thing. I will also adopt it for the DC processes. 2 pages, straightforward, but also cognizant of not oversimplifying, because decision makers also need adequate information. But also aligning to support the local government investment requirements and needs. So we need to harmonize if this, especially the PDM, is to give us the right results by making sure that we simplify, but also align our processes. The local government PPP guidelines 2023 served to enable implementation of the National Development Plan 3, and now we are working on Plan 4, which our Honorable Minister is leading on that front, under which Chapter 4 advances the use of partnerships with the private sector for economic growth. And I think even in the NDP 4 PPP framework now, in fact, given the current macroeconomic or fiscal condition, now we should be really highlighted more profoundly than it was, because I think that's the way to go. As an advocate of one government approach, and you have heard PSST talking about government working as a whole, as opposed to working in silos, we would like to thank the PPP unit and the Lady Department, I think where under the leadership of Commissioner Namara Anthony, with the Minister of Local Government, for this collaborative effort in developing these guidelines. This reflects good ownership, and we hope that moving forward, we shall also implement the guidelines together. Further, I appreciate the development partners. They have recognized some, particularly the World Bank Group, for facilitating this activity. But I think also all the support, because the World Bank has been supporting the efforts of both PIMS but also PPP unit for quite some time, and we thank them and the rest of the partners. To all stakeholders, primarily the local governments that contributed this work, our sincere gratitude to your views, input, and ownership. I strongly believe that PPPs, coupled with local government interventions such as LAID, will be good catalysts to achieve pillars of the parish development model, especially good public infrastructure and services for socio-economic transformation. It is therefore my pleasure to recommend the public-private partnership guidelines and all the related templates for adoption and use by all local governments. I thank you for listening to me, for God and my country. Thank you, and may God bless you. MC, I don't know whether I should take this singular duty to call the minister, to invite the minister to give his remarks and officially launch the guidelines. I think when I minister, it is in order, and I should grab this opportunity. Otherwise, the MC will grab it before and invite the chief guest. Yes, yes. So you're welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Seba. the representative of the permanent secretary, our friends, the development partners, local government representatives, and various officials who have been invited to this event, the chairperson and members of the board of the PPP, the executive director PPP, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great joy to welcome you all to this game-changing event that marks a significant milestone in our commitment to fostering economic development using pooled financing, PPPs, and other alternative financing options. On behalf of the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, I wish to extend my warmest greetings to each one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, you will recall that one of the strategic objectives of the NRM manifesto is to lower the cost of doing business by developing public infrastructure. And I think you have seen how much we have invested in the area of roads, the construction of dams, the oil infrastructure, industrial infrastructure, and all manner of infrastructure. Developing public and private sector institutions, that one we have done, and implementing the local economic development, the lead strategy for local development and increased local revenue. So we gather here today to launch the guidelines for local government PPPs and the principles of pooled financing to enable the local government to effectively contribute to the NRM objective of local economic development and to bring services to the local community. This we do cognizant of limited government resources and increasing competing priorities. And I'll pause for a moment to talk more about that. I've just talked about how NRM government has been investing heavily in infrastructure. Of course, part of those resources were government resources from our tax revenue and other sources of revenue. But largely, we have been borrowing. And as you see, some of this infrastructure is already wearing down. But it's a huge network of roads that we have built across the country. And then, as you know, when you borrow, it's a requirement that you have to pay. Otherwise, nobody else would be lending you money. So, some of these debts have reached their maturity dates. Some of them, the grace periods expired, and now you are required to pay back. The debt burden, therefore, has grown. I was looking at this burden a couple of years ago, I think not more than 7 years. The debt to GDP ratio was at about 23%. That is the debt to the GDP ratio. That out of your GDP, how much of that is constituted by debt? Today, I think it is in the region of 48%. And had it not been for the fiscal contraction policy, this debt level would have been worse. Now, when you compare this debt to the tax revenue, the level of debt to tax revenue, or to our revenue, total revenue, is about, I think, let me put it this way, not debt, but debt servicing, coming at about 40 So it means that for every shilling you collect in your taxes or non-tax revenues, 40% of that will go to servicing debt. And that leaves us with very little space in terms of our discretionary resources to finance other requirements of government. We have invested the money wisely. To get the oil infrastructure that we are talking about has not been an easy thing. But the investment path is not yet fully accomplished. So we have to continue investing. We need over 40,000 megawatts of power. That's our policy strategy. But the debt level has reached that magnitude. So this is when alternative financing of this nature becomes very, very critical. And I think this has to be emphasized. It's the time when you, the local government, are called upon to think outside the box, to say, how do we marshal these private sector resources to build public infrastructure or to deliver public goods? And this conference, therefore, this meeting, when we launch these guidelines, becomes very critical. And I want to agree entirely that we really need to simplify guidelines. Sometimes these guidelines are policies, because the more complex they become, the more we lock out potential entrants. So we have to look at all ways possible to make it feasible for the private sector to grab these opportunities. And we have a duty as local governments. And the duty is to be very innovative, very enterprising. One time I visited the Indian Entrepreneurship Development Institute, and I asked them to define who an entrepreneur is when I was listening to their presentation. And they told me that an entrepreneur is one who sees an opportunity where others see none. So where you think that there are no opportunities, an entrepreneur will see an opportunity. So we need to put on these eyes to make sure that we identify these great opportunities available within our midst. If we don't build a strong entrepreneurship spirit amongst us, I'm sure these guidelines will be there, they will catch dust, and there will be no results. And that dependency Mr. Mugunga was talking about will just worsen. Because our mindset has been that we prepare a budget, we send to central government, the central government provides the money. Even if that money was available, it's never going to be sufficient to deliver these public services. And therefore, we need to be very agile, we need to be very creative. You know, we must take this seriously, very, very, very seriously. The people who are down there responsible for all these, I don't know whether it's the commercial officers, the planners at the districts, you know, must be at their best. And I'm sure Jim will be really mobilizing them, you know, to make sure that they deliver to this one. The tendency or the temptation to wait for resources from government, I think, is not going to be fruitful at all. Look at this coming financial year. The calculations have indicated that the discretionary resources who have been available are going to reduce by a further 3.5 trillion shillings. And remember that we have to pay the wage bill to the workers of government. When you offset all that, you have to maintain the armed forces, police, and so on. Very little remains. So now, for the private sector who are represented here, I think the opportunity has come for you to get in. And I think we delayed, really. In many countries, people are using the private sector to deliver these public goods. I think we have been very slow in this area, and we really need to wake up. You just need to go to places like Dubai, and you see the work of the private sector. They built cities within cities. Now we have created new cities here, but they are all there waiting for government to provide the resources so that they do those minor things within their jurisdictions. But you go to Dubai. Today, they have data center within Dubai. Then they have, I don't remember the names, Dubai Festival City, you know? And when you go in these cities, much of the work is being done by the private sector. Those major hotel constructions, you know, you don't have to wait for government to put up a hotel. In Kayunga, where I come from, we need a modern hotel. You know, Kayunga is only 40 miles away from here. But it has become a major transit route, you know, to the east. Even people going to Nairobi pass there. And now we are going to construct a road to go through Choga. So people will need to take a break in Kayunga to prepare for a morning journey into Amorata, into Lira, the shortest cut. So we need a hotel. So Kayunga should not wait, you know, to be told. So the local government people there should be able to put this kind of project together. Because if you don't have a hotel in the area, then you have a problem. Now we have a regional referral hospital in Kayunga. And I see how people are struggling. I'm giving these as examples. To find where to spend a night. The people who come to take care of their patients or to visit them, you know, they need a nice place to stay, and they cannot find that nice place. And this is happening across local governments. You need tourists to come in your area, but they have no better hotel to stay. So all these are opportunities that are available for you. Now, going back to Dubai, as you walk through various malls, you get people telling you that, oh, you can build a villa here, you know, together with other people. And through that process, they have mobilized resources from all over the world. Just people walking through Dubai city, they have mobilized resources from so many other people, you know. Can we create that kind of flexibility that mobilizes resources not only from Uganda, but also from others? People who are just passing by. You just hear a man saying, hello, sir. Here, this opportunity, great opportunity, you know. So they are that aggressive. Can we be that aggressive? If we are going to build this country, we are going to require a new form of inertia, you know, to get things done. And I think we need to pick lessons like these ones, how people have modernized cities in just a few years. They become great cities, you know, that you could never have had if you were to follow the business as usual approach. So, as such, I cannot overemphasize the importance of the collaboration between the public sector and the private sector to leverage their diverse skills, resources. The private sector has resources. I could have also talked about these private municipal bonds, private bonds, which could be issued. All these are things that other people have used to mobilize resources. You know, the private sector may not necessarily have all the resources, but they can mobilize private resources amongst themselves to cause some of this infrastructure to be built. If you are going to wait for government alone to raise money from taxes, I think we are going to take a very long time, and we may probably never get there. So we leverage their diverse skills, their resources, and expertise to enhance service delivery, infrastructure development, and overall economic well-being of our communities. Our population, as you know, is growing. Yesterday, we launched the process, the census exercise in 2024. But we noted that when NRM came to power in 1986, our population was just about 14. Now, today the population is 46 million people. Those are the Ugandans. It has multiplied 3 times. I think that's more than 3 times. And the momentum is growing. So if we don't do this development of infrastructure, we are certainly going to be lagging far behind. Because that land you used to have for agriculture is now being redistributed. And it's time now to migrate. Industrialists need roads, better roads to construct. For tourists to come, you are going to require a separate set of infrastructure. If you are going to wait for all these, I'm telling you, the leaders in local governments, these people will come to overrun you, to overrun your assets, because the numbers are really seriously building up, and we really need to wake up. There's a slogan the Kabaka, the king of this area, used, Temubongota. Jim, you know better English. Temubongota means what in English? Don't slumber. We should not slumber. It's not time to slumber. So with the support of our development partners, United Nations Capital Development Fund, UNCDF, the European Union, and the Global Fund for Cities Development, FMDV, we have developed the framework for pooled financing, a mechanism designed to allow local government entities to combine their meager financial resources to enable them to finance projects, mitigating the challenges of limited resources, and providing a sustainable approach to funding local government and community initiatives. The PPP guidelines and the pooled financing principles that we are launching today provide a comprehensive framework for developing, procuring, financing, and managing PPPs and other projects at the local government level. They encapsulate the best practices and procedures to ensure transparency, accountability, and efficiency during the implementation of PPP projects and in accordance with the PPP Act 2015. I think on our side as well, on the part of government, like you have been talking about the DC Development Committee, the commissioner is there. You know, we just need also to make sure that our procedures are fast enough, you know, not to sit on these projects for a long time. We might not be sitting on them, but really to ensure that we operate like business units of government. So allow me to highlight a few examples that demonstrate the game-changing power of collaborating with the private sector to deliver public or social services. These are just examples, some successful examples that we have witnessed recently. And I have been in this city, Kampala. And here in this city, the private sector's involvement in collecting and disposing waste has not only improved the efficiency of the process, but has also contributed to a cleaner and healthier environment for residents. Of course, from a viewer, that is the position. but we are yet to do more in terms of pollution. I was at COP28 a few days ago, and there was an exhibition, you know, of the most polluted cities, and they were demonstrating how polluted they are. And I think the champion in pollution could have been, I think it was Delhi, yeah, Delhi, and there was another one, I'm forgetting it. But the third example, bad example, was Kampala, at 61% level of pollution, emissions in the space. And this pollution is responsible for the deaths that we're experiencing. Huge numbers of people dying due to lower respiratory infections. You know? So Kampala was considered to be one of them. One reason, of course, you have a lot of boda-bodas in the city, giving off emissions. Every second a boda-boda passes, you see just emissions, carbon, a lot of carbon in the space. And you think that that has left you the same. I'm telling you, you have become a victim of that. The next day, you are in hospital, and the government is paying the bill for the delivery of health services. Or you are dipping into your pocket to pay. It's a cost. So the local government can easily seize such opportunities and see how do we use cleaner technologies to change these borders. That's an opportunity already, you know, that this Kampala city must see. So, but we commend them for what they have so far been able to achieve in terms of waste management. And this is a model which awaits further improvement, has the potential to be replicated in other cities, towns, and municipalities to promote sustainable waste management practices. The second example is in the education sector, where the private sector has played a key role in expanding access to quality education. I'll take the example of the early childhood development across the government that is provided by the private sector here. Take primary education, the best performing schools in the private sector. Secondary is the same. So private schools have emerged as vital contributors, supplementing government efforts to meet the growing demand for education services. This collaborative approach has diversified the education landscape, offering a variety of options to parents and students. I'm told that today students can qualify with Cambridge certificates of education and the International Baccalaureate, IB, without setting foot in the United Kingdom or United States, respectively. Similarly, the healthcare sector, this is the third example, has witnessed the positive impact of the private sector taking a lead role in providing health service, especially primary health service. Private hospitals and clinics have significantly contributed to improving healthcare accessibility and quality. Through strategic partnerships with the public sector, we have witnessed improved healthcare delivery and to a certain extent increased availability of specialized health services. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, through the PPP unit, is committed to support all local government entities, and you heard him, to ensure the success of their PPP projects. We will offer technical guidance and support you in building the required capacity to ensure the sustainability and effectiveness of these projects. Mr. Jim Mugunga and Mr. Ashaba have made this commitment on your behalf. Please don't let me down. We have to provide the necessary capacity. How will they know unless they are told? Isn't that what the Bible says? So we have to tell them the way it is done, how it is done, how to create opportunities, you know. So in the spirit of one government approach, the PPP unit continues to work with the Ministry of Local Government and other government agencies to support local government entities in undertaking PPP projects and implementing the pooling financing framework. So local governments, don't wait for PPP to come to you. Don't also be difficult, you know. Don't be boastful. Know where they are, approach them. Show the need. If you don't show the need, you know, sometimes nobody comes to you. Show the desire that you want this, you know, have the appetite, and then you will get them to help you. So I applaud the teamwork that the PPP unit has been having with the lead department of the Ministry of Local Government during the preparation of these guidelines and principles. The unit will also continue to work with other stakeholders, such as financial institutions, development partners, and private sector stakeholders to create an ecosystem that fosters successful implementation of projects at the local level. These financing institutions are very, very key, because without money, you can hardly do much. In fact, in the strategic direction for the NDP, hitherto we have not been highlighting financing as one of those opportunities that we desperately need. This time I insisted as the head of planning that we must have this financing concept exhaustively discussed, because finance does a lot of things. It can certainly come through the development partners, but it can come through the financing sector. And let's discuss, you know, how best we can make this financing more accessible, you know, and more affordable by engaging these financing institutions. So they should get involved in this discourse at an early stage. And we are going to plan with them to see how we deliver these public services. And they benefit from a country that is developed. The more GDP we generate for this country, the more the financing sector benefits. So we are all stakeholders. And along these lines, the local government entities are encouraged to integrate the parish development model in all their development initiatives. You know, this development PDM, I think, has about 7 pillars, which are all very critical. So as a strategic initiative to decentralize development activities, the integration of PDM with the PPP delivery model will enable local communities to actively participate in decision-making processes, ensuring that projects align with their specific needs and priorities, as well as creating a sense of ownership and pride in projects that directly impact their lives. The impact of using these guidelines and the financing framework is game-changing, as I mentioned. We expect to see speed in delivering improved infrastructure at local government level, increased employment opportunities. It's very critical that we create jobs for this very young population. I've talked about the size of the population and the speed by which it is growing. More effective and efficient provision of public services, because people need these services now, actually yesterday, not even tomorrow. These services are desperately needed. And ultimately, a more robust local economy. So you'll be building a strong, resilient economy in your area that can stand all manner of shocks. So these benefits will reverberate across the local communities, fostering inclusive development, economic prosperity, and achievement of strategic objectives in the NRM manifesto. The local government entities will gain not only from improved service delivery, but also from the transfer of knowledge and skills from the private sector. They will have long-term financial sustainability, both from use of PPP and the use of the pooled financing principles. For the private sector, these partnerships will open up avenues for local investment, innovation, growth, and relevancy. Last but not least, in this era of rapid information, communication, and technological change, embracing innovation is paramount to efficient government processes. We have to be innovative, very creative, think about the usual, and create those opportunities. Be that entrepreneur that my Indian friend described. The PPP unit is therefore in the process of developing an online resource center that will serve as a dynamic knowledge-sharing platform, offering a wealth of resources, guidelines, best practices accessible to local government officials at their fingertips. Mr. Mugunga, when is this resource center? Can we put some timelines on it? How soon? First quarter of next financial year. This year, first quarter is past. Oh, the calendar year. Okay, that's the third quarter. So from January around there, expect to see a resource center online. The platform will provide comprehensive training and e-learning materials to enable continuous capacity building for all government officials. Through this centralized online resource center, local governments can stay abreast of the latest technological advancements, innovative and alternative financing models, and benchmark with successful PPP case studies across the globe. You need to benchmark sometimes. The Baganda have a saying, amagezi muliro. That this knowledge is like fire. When you don't have that fire in your house, you go to your neighbor and get it there. That's what we used to do. You go with dry grass, you collect the fire from a neighbor, you bring it. So likewise, knowledge is like that. So we need to benchmark these successful studies. They may not be in Uganda, they could be elsewhere. So we need to find ways of securing those successful examples. I call upon all local government entities, potential private sector partners, and other stakeholders to embrace these guidelines and financing mechanisms as instruments for positive change. Let us work hand in hand to build a more resilient, prosperous, and sustainable future for our local communities. Resilience simply means that if you get a shock, you remain strong. You don't just fall down. Some of us are not very resilient. Just a slight push like this, you collapse. You remember COVID came. Some economies more or less collapsed. Others remained resilient. And when COVID went, they were on their feet, ready, running, and that is resilience. So you need to build resilience within your local communities. I also wish to sincerely thank our development partners, and I will name them. The World Bank, as you clap kindly. UNCDF, FMDV, European Union, and UN Resident Coordinator's Office for the support rendered during this process. That's what we are thanking them for. I likewise thank the technical staff who worked tirelessly to develop these guidelines, and the various local governments for the foresightedness embracing the change. And I believe that they have embraced the change. By show of hands, can I see the local governments which have embraced the change? Oh, unfortunately, there are still very few. That's the bad news I can give you, Mr. Mugunga. So I think we need to do more work. They are not embracing the change. So your dedication to the betterment of our nation is commendable, and I'm confident that together we shall usher in a new era of engaging the private sector and mobilization of financing for the provision of the much-needed services to the communities. Should I now do the declaration? Is it the right time? Okay. So I now take this honor to officially declare this launch open for God and my country.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we give the Honorable Minister another round of applause? We want to thank you, Honorable Minister, on behalf of the unit and on behalf of the PSST, who is actually the chairperson of the PPC board. The PPU board is also chaired by the PSST, and Huntington as the acting PSST this morning. I think on behalf of your team and the unit, the minister has made commitments here. And Honorable Minister, members of the Fourth Estate will hold you, the minister, responsible for the commitments. But we really want to appreciate the commitments of government and the conversation around these PPPs. Honorable Minister, you are in Dubai for COP, and we know what you're doing, especially with the green financing as another area where another set of PPPs can be managed. Honorable Minister, there is one area I'm very passionate about, which is sport, and I'm glad the local governments are here. I think we are putting too much pressure on government to develop these sports facilities, yet the local governments working through the unit, now that we have these guidelines that have been shared, can develop sports facilities across the country. Government should not be able to do this. It's very expensive, Honorable Minister. But us in the media, we are saying government build the stadiums so that we build potential within our sports fraternities. I also think the other area, Honorable Minister, and I have been to Huntington's office before, we've spoken about this. I hope Francis speaks to this in his panel discussion. I think our MICE space, our MICE strategy is still lacking in the area of conferencing facilities. And it's again very expensive to tell government to go into conferencing. That's another great area for local governments to build capacity, working with the unit and working with other stakeholders to pool resources so that we build conferencing facilities that would drive our conferencing facilities. For example, we don't have a 10,000-seater conference center in this country. And we are losing out some businesses, Honorable Minister, to one of a very small neighboring country because they have built potential and capacity there. And I think we have the best food, we have the best facilities, we have the best environment, we have the best nightlife. Very few people talk about the nightlife in any part of these regions here. Uganda has the best nightlife anywhere in the world. And I'm talking when I know there are some Kenyans here and Tanzanians. They know we have the best nightlife. But we have not invested in that nightlife. I think we've allowed the private sector do it. It's very expensive. And I can tell you, I don't know if many people are aware, and I'm glad Jim mentioned this. Government owns shares in the Serena. The Serena works that were done, I think, Jim, was phase 1 and 2. Phase 3 and 4 include a very huge conference facility, but I think they're still looking for money, which means there is a problem, and that is an opportunity. Not government looking for money, the investors are looking for money. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's now come to the crux of the matter. Now that the minister has fully opened this launch, I want to begin this joint PPP presentation, which is going to be made by the PPP unit, the Nansana Local Council, and our friends at ULGA. But as Jim comes, you know he's the boss today, so I am managed by Jim today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maurice. Ladies and gentlemen, just a slight adjustment. The minister is also the minister in charge of planning. The National Planning Authority is currently undertaking an activity where the National Development Plan 4 is being conceptualized, and hence he's divided. We did not want to hold him back a lot. We really want to thank you, sir. But I'll request my colleagues, the team, to ensure that the minister, after he's launched this activity, we now sort of change the agenda to bring the launch of the guidelines ahead so that the minister does that activity and we are able to proceed with the rest of the event. May I ask Dorothy and Tim to please come forward. And Dorothy and the team, we go ahead and the Honourable Minister, Acting PS, Commissioner, my members of PCC, and would you join the Minister for... Okay. Now when you get men to start doing things, he was supposed to unveil something. The one who has carried it has has dropped the cover. So we have to have a conversation, but okay, we'll turn it, yeah. Yes. No, Maurice, that way. That is at least, for the time being, that covers for the mistake. So I'll ask the Honourable Minister to come forward. Mr. Shaba, PPC members, and partners, kindly. So what is going to happen is what was supposed to happen, which has not been adhered to, was the unveiling. And can I ask you to bring those umbrellas of ours, please? We have to complete this. Dorothy and Tim, I need the umbrellas for all of the people who are here. Can you cover that? The one who broke the rules? The Fourth Estate media, this has not happened.
Focus on you.
Focus on me now. Can I get the umbrellas, please? For the, I think there are about 7 of them. Umbrellas, yeah. Can I get them? As they come, this is basically ceremonial. Honourable Minister, I want to assure you that we have enough copies to cover the local governments. Secondly, we have e-copies to go around. Thirdly, the representative local governments here are those that participated in the pilot stage. We did this exercise through regional approach, and those who responded and had their projects assessed are the ones who are here, but eventually they will go through the process. One of the rules that have been broken for unveiling was supposed to bring this dummy covered in umbrellas of the partners, representing the partners who have worked on this. And these umbrellas were supposed to be handed over to you. And after that, they would have been opened to represent the people who have participated in this work. Unfortunately, they are not open. But, sir, they were supposed to be held by 6 people who would have handed them over to you, and then you would have unveiled following that. So we are still going to do it. So the dummy was supposed to be covered by that, but we still have achieved. Now, the fourth media, you can take your pictures. And the minister is going to unveil. We're going to do this 1, 2, 3, and 0. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause once again for this grand launch of the local government PPP pooled finance guidelines on this day, the 13th of December 2023. We are now going to, Honorable Minister, just to request that you append your signature to the guidelines, and we want to appreciate the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development and the Ministry of Local Government for jointly supporting this initiative. Shortly we will, and we are making sure it is formally launched by the Minister by appending his signature to the guidelines. And we want to appreciate all the stakeholders who have been asked to join the Minister at the front in launching the guidelines this morning here at the Sheraton Hotel. And very shortly we will be having presentations from the PPP unit, one of our local governments, and the Local Government Association, who will make a joint presentation on this 13th day of December 2023 as we launch these local government PPP pooled finance guidelines by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Local Government. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give them another round of applause? And immediately after the Minister, all the other partners and stakeholders will do the same, and then we will mark this as the formal launch. And as guided by our Executive Director, we did mention the fact that this particular part was changed in terms of the schedule as and when it was meant to happen, and that has allowed us to change the schedule and program as it is. For those of you who are watching us on Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, you are witnessing the launch of the local government PPP pooled finance guidelines, and this has been done by none other than the Minister of State for Planning in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and also witnessed here by the acting PSST, who is also the chair of the PPP board. And we want to appreciate all the stakeholders, including the Minister of Local Government, the local government authorities that are here, the Local Government Association that is represented here by the Executive Secretary, and all the stakeholders, including the development partners who continue to support the local governments here in the country. We will have, I think, I know Shaka, as a manager of media, wants a group picture here with the board. So on either side of the board. So Shaka, you can organize that and organize our people to make sure everyone appears in this picture. Jim, please join the team. So we must be able to balance each side. You, I think, have 4 representatives on either side. I think, Jim, you can come on this side. Yes. Members of the media, please capture and ensure that all our stakeholders are in this very big photo. Can we give the team another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to mark this launch? And we want to thank all the key stakeholders. Thank you so much for joining us. As we were introducing the different local government authorities that are here, we did receive notice that the mighty Gulu City is represented. Can we welcome Gulu City? We want to thank Gulu City for joining us. Thank you for joining us and for being part of this activity. I want in a very special way to also recognize some of our key stakeholders, KPMG, who are also here, and we want to thank you, KPMG, for joining us for this launch activity, and we appreciate that. And as the minister is leaving, I wanted to appreciate the PPP unit team. Can they stand? Can the PPP unit team, wherever you are, stand? Let us recognize you. Let's give them a round of applause. I see some here, there are others at the back there. We want to appreciate you. This launch is your launch also, clearly for the work you've been cooking at the unit. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I want to quickly move to our next presentations. As mentioned on the program, these are joint presentations on the process leading up to this launch and the opportunities for investment in the local governments. I'll invite Dr. Ruth Sengonzi to come and make her presentation on behalf of the PPP unit, and thereafter I'll be inviting the Nansana team, and finally we receive the Executive Secretary, Mr. Kuku from ULGA, who will make his presentation last in these three presentations. So let's start with Dr. Ruth. Can we welcome Dr. Ruth, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, all of you who are here. And can you kindly do me a favor? Please get up. I don't think you've gotten up since morning. Do me a favor, please. Can you stretch like this? And like that. Now turn around. That should be good enough for your system. Okay. I realize the minister has departed, but our invited guests, all protocols observed in all your capacities. I welcome you here once again this morning. So as mentioned earlier, this is a joint presentation, and we shall be doing it with ULGA, and that is Richard Okuku from ULGA, and Mr. Isaac Miro from Nansana. So this is a culmination of a process that has lasted more than 2 years. So it is a very special day, like Maurice rightly said. It is something that we have been awaiting as a unit, as the technical arm, in seeing that finally PPPs are going to be accessed at the grassroots. Okay? Earlier on, we had been going around the country, as my director said, my ED said, we had been moving around the country. We were consulting. This has been a very deeply consultative process. So we were consulting with local governments because we realized of all the PPPs that were coming to the unit, we were not receiving any smaller projects from the local governments. So when we moved around, we took PPPs to the people in a mass sensitization capacity building drive. But then we realized that local governments were not quite comfortable, because if you look at Section 2 of our PPP Act, you'll find mega projects. You'll find the talking of power projects, talking of roads and highways, talking of oil and gas projects, and then the people were not quite very comfortable with that because they thought it was something else. It wasn't, PPP was not for local governments, therefore it was inaccessible. So like my ED said earlier, we thought we needed to deduct the guidelines from being very big and bombastic to something that could be managed at the local level. So this is a culmination of this process, and we're very happy to see it coming to fruition. So today, as part of this process, we're going to be launching 20 projects that have been able to make it to the end of a shortlisting process. And as the presentation is going to show you, we've gone through a very deep process, and it is going to be launched today. As we launch the guidelines, we're launching the projects as well. So allow me to recognize in a special way. I know we've worked with so many institutions, but in a special way, we recognize the collaborative efforts given to us by the local government, Ministry of Local Government, the local governments themselves, Julius I don't know if anyone has acknowledged Julius, and the local governments know Julius. He was almost always sat at the PPP unit. Julius helped us. He has all the contacts of the local governments, and every time we needed a contact, every time we hit a blank wall, Julius was always available. Julius Mahere from Ledic. So thank you very much, Julius. We also recognize, who's running the slides, please? Can you kindly run the second slide? Yeah, no. So I would like to recognize the World Bank as well. I would like to recognize UNCDF. We've been down in the trenches with these organizations. UNCDF, we were in Entebbe earlier this year, and same as FMDV. Okay. Kindly bear with us there. Please bear with us while we get the slides up, because it's got some factual figures. I could do without that, but there is some factual figures. I just want to show the breakdown of how we arrived at this place today, and I would need to have the slides running. So local governments, we want to thank you. We know this has been highly consultative. We've been calling you to rooms. We've been sitting down practically with you as a unit, wanting to get your opinions. But in all the times we came out to the different regions, we did, remember I've said we've done this for over 2 years. So we went to the regions, and within the regions, we converged several districts, several local governments that were nearest to that region. So local governments have been very instrumental in this. They've been attending the meetings, they've been working with us, commercial officers, district planners, COWs, the political leadership within the local governments. We thank you so much for your support in this endeavor. So we acknowledge that this is not our work. This is the work of the local governments. It is not bottom-up. It is not up-down effort. Rather, we want it, and in order for you to own this, we'd like it to be a bottom-up endeavor. And so far, so good. This has been the situation. Okay? So local governments, thank you so much for that. So what happened is when we came out to the local governments, when we first came out collecting ideas, after we realized that we were deducting the process, first of all, even the guidelines, we needed input from the local governments. So when we realized we were now going to be collaboratively doing this with you, we came out and asked for project ideas. Okay? So when the project ideas came on board, we knew that we had to review the project ideas. So then we took the project ideas through a screening process, and we had several parameters for the screening. And some of those parameters included legal. We needed to know that the land on which the project would be situated was actually owned by the local government, and that there was proof of the ownership. We also needed to find out whether this land had any encumbrances, did it have any outstanding leases, and how were the local governments going to ensure that the land didn't have any encumbrances. So then we also looked out for environmental and social safeguards. The project ideas had to be screened for environmental sensitivities, social sensitivities, related to the project, related to the location, related to the technical idea of the project. So then we also, the other parameter was screening for was commercial attractiveness. And because we know that the government of Uganda is using PPPs as a means of bridging the infrastructure gap, we had to ensure that the projects that were getting the ideas that were screening were actually commercially attractive to the private sector, so that the private sector would feel comfortable enough to come and invest with the projects. So the other parameter was market interest, again related. Excuse me. Okay, thank you. Talking about market interest, related to that, we would then look out for market interest preliminarily. All these were preliminary checks that would prove whether the project, or not prove yet, but rather point whether the project was actually viable as a PPP. In some countries, PPPs are used by government, where government is paying, but in this case, like my minister said earlier, we realize that there is a financing gap, and therefore we want to tap into the private sector finance to deliver the projects. Therefore, it was important that there was market interest in the project idea, and that was one of the other parameters. So the other was the level of technical complexity, the level of PPP suitability. Is the project actually good? What are the value for money indicators for the project? So we also looked out for that preliminarily. We don't want to move a project much further only to stop it. So that was one of the other parameters. Then the level of information available. Ladies and gentlemen, we found that going out to the field, a local government would have a project idea, but they didn't have enough information to back up the project idea. Information such as the numbers, for example, early preliminary demand. Is there actually demand for this service that you want to put up? Will the private sector want to invest in a project with very little demand? So that was an issue also. And the information such as preliminary cost estimates, the planners, district planners were very good with this. They provided information, although in some cases the information was not available. So this is the sort of the information we needed at that point. And then how did the projects align with the national strategic suitability? Are they actually aligned with the development goals of Uganda? How do they stack up against NDP3? And how do they stack up against the local government strategic plans? You all know in the local governments, you also have individual strategic plans, and this is the sort of information was required to see how strategically suitable the project idea was. So we took the projects. If you see the fourth level now of the infographic, you'll find that we went through a series of weighting, we went through some scoring as well, and the pass mark for that was 70 minimum. So if you had 70 and above, the project idea made the next level. So of course this was done in consultation with Ministry of Local Government, as well as with the unit, checking against our act, checking against our other guidelines, checking against all the information that supports PPPs. So we then had a final screening, as we're going to go through the next slides, to show, to come up with the project long list. Okay? So at this point, having run around the entire country together with our partners, as I indicated earlier, we had a total of 213 candidate PPP project ideas. Okay? So at that point, we, using the screening that I've shown you before, we had effective candidate PPP projects dropped to 206 because 7 of the projects that were earlier submitted had been public free zone and industrial park ideas. They were eliminated because they are covered under different jurisdiction and they could not be covered as PPPs. So next we had further screening left us with 42 project ideas because these are the ideas that gave 70% score mark. And then the 164 projects sadly did not make the 70%. So of the 42 project ideas, 34 needed local government approval. The local councils had approved these project ideas. And at the time of compiling our long list, we had not received 6 projects, approval for 6 projects. So of the 164, 162 was less than the threshold, and but then we had 2 projects brought in under the regional balance. We thought some regions had not been represented, and as you know, we really want local governments to develop. We would like to see grassroots development through PPPs because these are the areas that are really underserved by national PPP projects. So at that point, we had 2 projects brought in under regional balance. So if you look at the infographic on the left-hand side, it gave us 32, the summary would be 34 projects approved by local governments, then the 6 that had approval pending, then the 2 for regional balance, and then giving us the final short list of 42 projects. So, ladies and gentlemen, in all your protocols, we have provided a list of 42 projects here that made the long list. And a quick scan through, you'll see that there is representation nationally. We have Jinja City, we have Apache, we have Mokono, we have Namaingo, Buhweju, Isingiro, Gulu City, Soroti City, and even Wakiso, Mbale, Mbara, Nansa, Entebbe, West Nile. As you can see, we practically covered the map of Uganda. So that is a sample. You have it in your handouts, by the way. And that is the 42 projects that made the long list. So moving on from the long list, how do we get to the 20 that we are launching today? So from the 42 shortlisted candidate PPP project ideas, 31 of those we engaged further with the local governments. Through telephone calls, through meetings, face-to-face meetings, through colleagues, Grant Thornton, I didn't acknowledge you earlier, but we appreciate your efforts in all this. So together with our friends at Grant Thornton, we had further engagements with the local governments to lead us to 31 good projects, and 11 projects were non-responsive at that point. So further prodding, pushing, coaxing led to we didn't get successful with that. So we had 31 projects. Then furthermore, screening, we thought that of the 31 projects, we needed more information, and 22 projects provided the information for preparing a concept note. So, ladies and gentlemen, during our process, the PPP process, in order to get a project through to our committee, because we're the technical arm of our committee, which has already been presented to you. So in order for us to have a foot in the doorway, to have any audience with our committee, we have to have field concept notes. So at that point, we needed to populate a concept note. We have our templates available online. We have templates available in the guidelines that have been handed out today. And so in order for us to populate that, we needed some finer details. And for the 22 projects, 20 concept notes were presented, and then 2 were dropped as they're already being funded by other agencies. It came to our knowledge that 2 of the projects were already being presented, rather being funded by development partners or other sources. Okay? So this is how we get to the 20 projects that we're running today, that we're launching today. So just a sampler of how the scoring went, well knowing that if you earned a 2.5 or more score in a screening analytical tool, the project would make the mark. So these are the projects. This is an example of the projects that and how they were scored. Ginger Taxi Park project scored a 3.35. And then micro enterprise and cottage industries, for example, in Apache, got a 2.74. Purongo Cultural Center in Noya got a 2.71. Ecotourism and apiculture down on the list was 2.66. And then the development of affordable housing Soroti was at 2.57. So this is just to show an appreciation of how the scoring went or the sort of marks you'd have. By the way, this is a self-screening tool and it is available on our website. If you think of any project idea beyond today, today is the beginning of a journey that we're going to be working. But if you think of a project idea, you can self-screen the project before coming to us, and that will make the work faster for the local government as well as for the unit. So this is the sort of scoring that you will come up with. And as you can see in the extreme end column, then the project had a project information memoranda, and it would then move on. Okay? So the concept notes, the following, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to acknowledge with me the following projects that I'm going to read out. Please clap for them. They have worked with us, they have walked the journey thus far, and they deserve our acknowledgement and our prayers moving forward. So if I read out a project, kindly acknowledge them, clap for them, congratulate them for having made it this far into the journey. So Ginger Taxi Park project, thank you very much, Ginger, clap for them. The micro enterprise and cottage industries in Apache. Do you have a representative here? Apache? Apache DLG? Yes, thank you very much for working with us. Development of hospitality facility in Lolwe. Do we have anyone from Namaingo? Thank you, Namaingo. DLG. And the Purongo Cultural Center in Noya. Any representative here? So let's acknowledge them still. And we have the Lira Solar Park. You'll notice that we have several solar park projects on this, and I don't think it's any coincidence given how we really still need a lot of energy. We still have a lot of energy needs, and energy is a catalyst for development. So we have several solar parks, and I'm sure there are many more to come up because we had some others on the short list. So that is Oyam Solar Park. Anybody from Oyam? Oyam? Thank you, Oyam, for being here with us today. We also have another solar park for Lira, DLG. Yeah, kindly clap for them. Yeah. So we have the James Grant Tourist Site, again, Namayingo DLG. Yeah. We also have the Ecotourism and Apiculture Center, Mokono, DLG. We have Waste Collection and Management Sorority. Again, solid waste is such a big deal, as you heard from my minister. Third, Kampala, waste pollution, and this is something that could be very instrumental, or it could be funded by the private sector, as is happening in Kampala. Sorority, waste collection and management. Then we have housing, affordable housing project, again for Sorority. Do you have any representatives from Sorority? Yes, thank you for being with us today. So, Goma on-grid solar electrification project. Mukono, have I seen anyone from Mukono? Mukono, thank you very much for all these projects. Then we have another solar mini-grid for Katikolo. Again, Mukono. Then we have Kome Island Solar Power Project. That is Mukono once again. Thank you very much. Then from PG District Local Government, we have Buyiga Solar Power Project. We have Buyiga Solar Power Project. Then we have Mbale City Stadium. As Maurice has indicated, sports is such a low-hanging fruit for Uganda. So we have Mbale coming in here to pioneer that project in the sports sector. Then we have Mbarara City Abattoir. From Mbarara, Isombara at the back. Yeah. So we have Nansana Transport Transit Station, and they're coming up to present to show us a few highlights of their project. So Nansana there. And then we also have Entebbe Sports Center, Namate Grounds. Anybody from Entebbe? DLG? Entebbe local government gave us that project. And then we have the hydropower project from West Nile region, particularly Madiokolo. Yeah? So then finally on the list we have Laibi Modern Market. That is in Gulu. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Local governments, we acknowledge your efforts. We're really pleased about this. For the private sector that is within the rooms, we believe within this room, we believe you've seen the preliminary showcase of local government projects. There is so much, because even the 200, where we started, the 213 projects, it means that even if the information was not available at that time, there is room to grow these projects, to refine them in order for them to come up for development. So in summary, we're seeing just a recap of what the process has been like. We had 213 project ideas, then we narrowed that down to 42 projects, and then through an iterative process with our local governments, with development partners, with the unit, we developed and finalized 20 concept notes. So prioritized using the tool that has been developed by the World Bank, but also available on our website. We prepared the brochures, and project information is available for these projects for further moving them to the next level. And for any private sector who would be here being interested in these projects, these are available also on our website in order to see or to prepare yourselves to receive them when we come out looking for the private sector partnership. So PPP pipeline is a dynamic process. So this is not the end. So while we launch the 20 flagship projects, this is only a precursor of more good of the projects that is going to come. So we're going to start today. We're going to move forward. Coming out to the local governments is not going to solve because we have now launched the project. We continue to be available for support. In case you need us, the PPP unit is available to guide you, to hold your hand, to ensure that we have working projects in order to have development needs met right at the local governments, right at the grassroots, where the services are very, okay? So this is a starting point for local government PPPs. With us today, having the understanding, with us always present and available, please feel free to come to us. The projects that have been dropped could be developed further. Even more project ideas coming up can be taken on. With our support, we can see that projects move from paper to actual site implementation and further into operation. Okay? So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm going to call upon Isaac from Nansana. He's going to showcase the key information regarding his project. And these are only sample projects. They've been randomly sampled and selected from the 20, as well as Mr. Okuku from Muga will be talking about the Madi Okolo and calling us to action. Thank you very much.